Hey everyone, welcome from Data to Dollars, personalization that drives growth. We'll give it another few seconds for everyone to kind of join and get settled, and we'll get started. All right, let's get going. I think a lot of people are here. Welcome again to From Data to Dollars, personalization that drives growth. Uh, my name is Derek Barca. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at SilverTech. For those that aren't familiar with us, we're a digital marketing and technology consultancy specializing in financial services, but we work with a lot of different industries, and we do everything from deep user research and strategy through website design and development, custom application development, data and AI. One of our niches is really working with your first party data to understand it, to look at insights, to use that to drive personalized experiences across all your channels, which is what we're going to talk about here today. With me is Tracy DeRocher from St. Mary's Bank. Tracy, you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Derek. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. Tracy DeRocher, Senior Vice President of Marketing Strategy here at St. Mary's Bank. We are very proud to be the first credit union in the nation. We're located over here in New Hampshire, about 45 minutes north of the Boston area, and proud to be part of the community and be part of the overall credit union movement here in the US. And also very excited to partner with the folks here at SilverTech. So thanks for looping me in, Derek. Appreciate it. Excited to talk to everybody today.
Awesome. Thanks, Tracy. I also want to thank Progress Sitefinity. They're one of our technology partners and the platform we use to do a lot of personalization for St. Mary's, and you'll see a little bit more about that later. Like I mentioned, we're going to talk about personalization today. It's obviously a popular topic. I feel like I've been in the industry for 20 plus years, and I think we've been talking about personalization for more than half of that. But I feel like despite all the talk, I feel like a lot of organizations still struggle to adopt personalization. And I think a big part of the issue is they don't really know where to start. And that's what we're going to kind of talk about today is how St. Mary's got started. We're going to talk about turning your first party data into real-time personalization, moving beyond behavior-based personalization. And that's not meant to kind of, shun behavior-based personalization. We support that 100%. We're all about that crawl, walk, run approach to personalization. And behavior-based personalization is a great place to start. But we're going to go beyond that today. We're going to talk about, how do we take context, how do we take your first-party data and identity to kind of create those really tailored first-party experiences. We're going to talk about, building personas from real data. Tracy will talk a lot about that, and some of the insights they have there from St. Mary's. Who owns personalization? It's a really large effort, and as Tracy likes to say, it takes a village. She's going to dive into kind of from her organization, who owned it and how they tackled it, and then finally, kind of everyone's favorite or least favorite subject is AI. How does AI play into this? Where can it help? Where is it hype and that sort of thing. So moving on to first party data and why it matters. Financial institutions sit on a ton of rich first party data, probably more than any other industry that we deal with today. And for those that aren't familiar with what first party data is, it's the data that you own. It's the data that your credit union or bank owns about your customers, your members. And you know a lot about them. Like I said, probably more than any other industry. Who the people are, the demographics, obviously things like age, what their families, do they have children, where they live. You probably know what car they're driving to their job, which you also know about because you see their direct deposits and things like that. And you also know, where they shop. You see all their transactional data and things like that. And that's a wealth of information you can use to drive personalization, drive, experiences and build up trust in relationship with your customers or members. But again, a lot of FIs struggle because they don't really know how to take that data and activate it, how to use that to drive personalization, which is what we're going to, talk about today. We're going to talk about how you do that at scale. You might have 50,000 customers or members. You might have over 1 million. How do you take that data and enable it to kind of drive personalization at scale? And then finally, why are we doing this? Obviously, again, we want to create those one-to-one relationships, but really in 2026, consumers are expecting it. We've been, customers of Amazon for 20 plus years now. We've been using Netflix and Hulu and Spotify, and all of those platforms are, handing us content and recommendations that are tailored to us. And obviously, banks and credit unions aren't Amazon; they're not, Netflix. But all of our customers, all of our members are customers of those other organizations, and they've come to expect that from everyone they interact with. So it's really on us as FIs to do the best we can to recommend not just products, but recommend advice and insights that's going to make their lives easier. And how do we go about doing that? Before we jump in, wanted to kind of take a quick poll to kind of really understand, where are folks in their personalization journey, and maybe we can tailor the conversation based upon that feedback. So, which best would describe your organization's current personalization maturity? Are you not personalizing at all yet? Are you using that basic behavioral personalization that we talked about? Are you segmented audiences but kind of lack that real-time or identity-based personalization? Are you able to connect known customer data into digital channels today? Are you actively exploring even, AI-driven personalization? Or are you just not sure and need some help to get started? So give everyone a minute to kind of take a vote, and then we'll look at the results. These are always interesting to see where it comes out. All right, what do we have here? Okay, about expected. A quarter of people aren't personalizing yet. 12% behavioral. 42%, the biggest one, are segmenting and kind of lack real-time identity-based stuff. This is great. This is actually good because there's a lot of stuff we're going to dive into today. So very, very applicable, exciting stuff. Jumping in. So Tracy, the spark that kicked off St. Mary's personalization journey. I've heard you say this a few times in describing bank marketing and how you guys use incentives and offers and things like that. You said it's a lot like you walk up to an unknown person, you're like, "Hi, nice to meet you. Let's get married." Explain what you mean about that and kind of what kicked off St. Mary's journey to personalization.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Derek. So I love this photo. I think it's hysterical, but it's also kind of eye-opening because I feel like in a lot of our digital channels, this is what's happening. We're this young gentleman here as credit unions, and we're asking people to marry us, i.e., adopt a product, sign on a product the second they walk onto a page. So instead of that, it's not, "Hi, nice to meet you. Let's get married." Like, we need to have some dating in between there. We need to understand who these people are, have some small talk, warm up to the conversation, and truly have meaningful conversations with them. We've figured this out really, really well at the branch level. So again, folks are not opening up the doors to your branch and walking in and being greeted with, "Would you like to open a checking account today? I'll give you $300 if you do it." We're having conversations. "Oh, I saw you last week and you mentioned your children are going off to college. How did that go? Hey, I know you just bought a car last month. How's the loan payments working for you? Do we need to talk about other products?" We're having meaningful conversations based on our relationship with them and how we've developed that relationship over time. And so it's really, we're at the point where we need to bring that personalization and bring that really individual conversation into the digital space and really start to have a much warmer conversation and a much more meaningful conversation with these audiences to be able to have them convert. And to make those digital interactions feel like a human conversation and bring that warmth and relevance to those conversations. So I guess how do we get started on this? Well, the first thing I want to make sure I point out is that personalization is not a switch, it's a journey. You don't get to go into even the best systems like Sitefinity and go in there and just flip a switch and turn it on and poof, you're personalized. It doesn't work that way. It's one small step at a time and making incremental changes to become more and more personalized, to become more and more segmented, to become more and more relevant as time goes on. So you've got to have a little patience and set that expectation through your organization as well. It really allows you to ensure that you are taking smart steps and you are putting relevant information in front of folks. Let that data that comes in with each step guide your journey. We certainly didn't launch 75 segments on day one. We launched 2 segments on day one. So again, just this kind of one step at a time, starting very simple, improving value and iterating and continuing down that path.
Yeah, Tracy, I think that's important. It's about, like I said, I mentioned earlier, but we really kind of push the crawl, walk, run approach. Don't jump in and try and boil the ocean. Pick, to your point, pick two specific segments. Let's figure out how to personalize for those, measure it, see how well it's doing, and then iterate on that. So I think with St. Mary's, we did the 2 known segments, and then from there, I think we piggyback on to kind of maybe 3 unknown ones based upon geography and things like that. But it was really about, let's start small and then kind of iterate from there, which I think is a less daunting approach, which is nice. So from there, let's talk about first party data a little bit. And I think one of the things that Tracy talked about that's super important is that relationship. We can obviously look at all the data that banks and credit unions have on their customers and kind of get impersonal. Let's just look at the data and use that to drive experiences and things like that. But I think to do it correctly, you really need to look at all those different touch points. And if you look at banking in particular, there's so many different touch points we have with our customers and members. On the digital side of things, you obviously have the website where a lot of people are going to. You have the mobile app where probably most people are going to. You have online banking. You have your loan applications, your account opening forms. You have email. You might have SMS and text messaging and things like that. All on the digital side. And then that customer human relations side, obviously you have your tellers interacting with people. You have people calling, customer service reps in the call center and things like that. Have people interacting with, loan officers. Maybe you have, wealth division that interacting with people. There's tons of different touch points we have with our customers, and each of these is really an opportunity. It's an opportunity to, use that touch point to establish trust, have those communications that Tracy talked about, to understand who they are. And it's an opportunity to kind of gather data. Again, how are those loan payments working out for you? How, do your kids need new accounts and things like that. Really start to gather data that you can use to influence conversations on other channels, as you start to kind of build out what that might look like. And a big part of that is, again, setting that foundation, understanding what these channels are, what the opportunities are for kind of gathering that data, and where can we actually personalize across all these different touch points. I think it's time for another poll, again, just to kind of figure out where people are today and kind of where we can go from here. When you think about personalization, I guess what's your biggest obstacle to personalization? Is it, and here's a big one, is your data siloed? Maybe you don't have a data warehouse and your data is kind of all over the place, and all those different touch points I talked about. There's no underlying data layer. Do you lack clarity on ownership? Who owns personalization? Is there a compliance concern? Maybe. Do you just not have enough time or internal resources? We hear that one a lot. We don't know where to start. Again, that's another one we hear a lot. And then, is it just not a priority right now? So let's take a moment and kind of see where people are today. All right, our data silo is over 54%. That's good because we're going to talk a lot about kind of what the technology stack looks like a little bit later, and how to kind of where to start, even if you do have data silos. Lack clarity on ownership. That's obviously a big one too, especially obviously Tracy, you're in marketing, so you kind of own the marketing side of things, but there's I'm sure different people own different digital products and stuff like that maybe you don't have purview over. Compliance, not a big deal, so that's good. Internal resources, that's always that's always a struggle. And then not knowing when to start pricing. Yeah, so I think this is pretty consistent what we typically see. So that's good to know. All right, back to you, Tracy. So how'd you get started?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk about those different teams. And I know those hurdles can be tough sometimes and can at times feel unsurmountable. But it's all about, again, that those small steps, working with the risk team, again, kind of, those are folks that we have to kind of sell them into this concept sometimes and make them feel comfortable because they're trying to protect our members and the FI. But there are things that you can do that, they're not requiring PII or they're a limited amount of data. So we can take some of those very small incremental steps, prove the worth of them, prove the safety of that information, and continuing to advance forward. So how we in particular started is we split our audience in half, known users, unknown users. Is the person visiting this homepage somebody that has logged into digital banking before or not? Yes or no? Pretty straightforward. And then for the folks that were known users, we said, what's another very easy, simple segmentation we can do? And that was zip code. Where do they live? We have 4 different regions within that we serve here at St. Mary's. And one of those regions happens to be on the Seacoast. And then the others have some pretty iconic imagery as well. One of them is in our state capital. So just segmenting them based on their geographical area was something where we know we could put a little bit of meaningful information and differentiation in terms of messaging. But this was not earth-shattering data. We weren't loading member number in there. We weren't loading, social security number. That would be silly. But this is pretty basic, very safe data that we loaded to be able to just do some initial segmentation. And we started to really look at how do we go on now that we've gotten that, now we look at the data and say, how can we go beyond those first levels? What are the next steps? Do we start looking at specific products and product adoption? Do we look at other demographic factors? Again, just one step at a time and start going a little bit deeper each way down. And not only does that make it digestible for your team, but as we talked about, it adds a comfort level for other business partners as well, and really allows you to focus on how you can kind of perfect this moving forward. Another piece to this puzzle for us was the creation of personas. So personas allowed us to start saying, okay, who are the different people that we are speaking to? What do they look like? Where do they work? Who are they as individuals? And we spent a lot of time on that last year as a prefix to kind of personalization for us. We found, and I should have included this in my introduction, I am not traditionally from the banking industry. I've been in marketing for many years, but only a couple of years into my banking side of marketing. And one of the things that surprised me when I started is that bank marketing tends to be very inward facing. And messaging to your existing members. And so we wanted to kind of take a little bit of a step back from that and say, how do we go out to our market beyond our membership? And so we not only looked inward as in who are our members today, but look outward facing into the market on who is in our market area today. What is the market potential that is out there? Should we be going after Gen Zers, or is this particular region actually skewing much older and that's not the right move for that region? Just really kind of gathering information from all of those data sources to create those personas. And then we also recognized if we wanted to kind of ensure the success of these personas, we needed our entire institution on board with them. So we did roll it out to the entire institution. And one really fun way that we actually did that is we have 4 personas we rolled out. We found one of all 4 of those within our institution, and we asked them to help us in rolling this out. And they dressed up, they created scripts, they had talking points, and those people personified our personas. And it really helps just kind of put a face and a personality to each of these. It allows people to connect these personas to their everyday work because it's not just a marketing function. It was really fun and people enjoyed it and they embraced it. And it really helped to kind of sell that in throughout the organization and give people some understanding and some of the why behind what we were doing. And it really has taken off quite well. When we talk about David Rodriguez, who is our essential worker here, they know who we're talking about, and they know who he is. It's been a really fun journey, and I think it has really given us a lot of foundation to build our personalization on.
That's kind of funny. I don't think I knew that story about you actually having, real persona characters internally that walked around and dressed up and stuff like that. That's funny.
Maybe we'll dress you up at our next meeting.
So obviously St. Mary's, they knew what their organizational goals were. They kind of knew that persona or kind of ideal customer profile that they were going for in order to kind of to meet those different growth goals. They knew the different, target markets they're going after and things like that. I think where SilverTech kind of came in and helped was with some of that additional research that we did around the personas, just our experience in financial services, in website conversions and things like that, to kind of help kind of polish and package up those personas, but then really help with kind of that identity piece. How do we actually look at the data that St. Mary's has? We sat down with Tracy and her team, as well as their data science team, to understand, okay, what data do they actually have in the data warehouse? St. Mary's is fortunate that they already had a data warehouse built in Snowflake that was kind of pulling information from their different systems, from their core and that sort of thing. They have someone managing, they have a data engineer, data science kind of managing all that, who is able to kind of help us with, data feeds and things like that. So certainly fortunate from that standpoint, but it's not necessary. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but we really kind of stepped in and helped. Okay, what data do you have? How do we identify the data pieces we can use to kind of put people in those personas? And then, as Tracy kind of alluded to before, how do we connect identity to that persona? And the way that we did that was, as soon as someone logs into online banking once, we can connect that user to their profile that we're pulling in from the data warehouse, and now we can drive personalization based upon that. That was nice. And also the known user piece, as Tracy had mentioned too. We also had a number of unknown users. Most of those were geographic based. As she mentioned, we really wanted to go after the Seacoast. That was kind of a growth goal for them to kind of expand their membership out the Seacoast. And we could have done zip code based personalization on the website using Sitefinity, but instead, I think this is a better tactic. They actually did zip code based marketing in their digital media. So all of their Google ads and media spend was very geographic approach. They were driving obviously incentives and things like that to certain geographies. And then as people came to the site based on those paid media campaigns, at that point, we built up those persona rules around that. So if someone came in on a campaign, now we can tag them as that persona. And then every time they came back to the site, make sure they're getting offers around those offers, making sure, to Tracy's point, they're seeing the imagery, whether it be the capital, whether it be the Seacoast and that sort of thing. Again, just trying to build that trust and that relationship with those folks.
Yeah, so website is so important. We spent a lot of time talking about that here, but equally important is making sure that you integrate this kind of personalization approach across all your channels. Again, this is a journey. I would love to just have my magic wand that makes them all kind of align, but you get there one step at a time. But it is important to look at things like emails and ads and making sure a big piece of why we kind of rolled out personas to the entire organization is that it does matter. If our collections team is calling on somebody, they need to know who they're talking to and what motivates that person and how to properly connect with them, just as much as the teller line does, just as much as everyone else in the organization and marketing included. So really making sure that all of those channels get that kind of touch and expertise and alignment on how we're talking to them. We need to kind of carry that same story and approach through all of the channels, and make sure as well that we're using the right channels for the right messages to the right audiences. So, it goes without saying, but if we're talking about some of our older generations, that may be picking up the phone. If you're trying to reach one of your members who's 19 years old, chances of them actually picking up the phone are pretty slim to none. If they're my daughters, good luck. You'll never get them to do it ever. But if you send them a text message, that may be the quickest way to get their attention and to get a reaction. But maybe text message isn't right if you're talking about more of a private matter or something very in-depth. So again, you've got to think about who you're talking to and what you need to talk about to make sure that you're picking the right channel to talk to the right folks. And then moving on, really some early examples of success that we've seen on our website, those local splits that we talked about. It really is just one little little win, but it was a win. So just switching to see you at the Seacoast, using some imagery that's very Seacoast focused and feels familiar. Folks on the Seacoast are really, really passionate about the seaport, using those images, and making sure that we understand the demographics out in the Seacoast, giving them the right products. Really, if we look at the numbers, if all we did was swap out some of the Seacoast messaging, not even the products, just the messaging and the imagery, we saw about a 3% lift in click-through rate. It's pretty bare bones personalization, but that was a decent, meaningful lift. And so what we're looking to do is continue to build on that, continue to deepen that personalization. And while your specific outreaches, if you're talking about like a channel like email or text messaging or something like that, those audiences may be smaller, but your impact and your percentage of engagement is going to be significantly higher. So seeing some early initial success and looking to continue to build upon that. Another kind of personalization effort that we have been making is around marketing automation. What our marketing automation means to us today is email. We haven't gone down the text messaging path quite yet here at St. Mary's. But recently we switched marketing automation tools. We're now using Sparrow, which is another amazing partner of ours. We're very, very fortunate to have very innovative and collaborative partners. And Sparrow is another great example of that. And they have really helped us rebuild not only just our onboarding journeys, but our approach to those, as well as our approach to campaign emails. And we're really looking to kind of mirror that personalization we're doing on the web page over onto the email side. Everything from images to offers, to which events we're promoting to which locations. We've even taken our member connection, which is our monthly newsletter. And this may be a really easy first step for you in personalization. We took that monthly newsletter, duplicated it 4 times and said, all right, to start, we're just going to swap out the events that we're doing and only send events to each of our 4 regions. It's pretty simple, but again, it's that first initial step and you start to see, how did that work? How did that help? Taking some of your onboarding journeys and saying, okay, these are these folks and these are these folks, and you just swap some messaging on it. pretty easy steps, but good foundational steps to start getting some small wins in that personalization bucket so that you can start to kind of move forward. And again, it's really important that you start to do that across all your channels. So it helps our members see what is truly applicable to them. And in that engagement, we just see continues to rise on those.
All right, jumping to technology. And this doesn't have to be complicated. I mentioned earlier that St. Mary's was fortunate that they already had the data warehouse in place. And obviously, your end goal was probably to be there, to kind of have this full-blown digital platform, digital experience platform ecosystem. And I like to call it ecosystem because there's a lot of products out there that call themselves digital experience platforms. And I think that's a bit of it's a pet peeve of mine because I consider that a misnomer. As we looked at that former slide that had all the different touch points for financial institutions, there's no single platform that's going to help you drive personalized experiences across all of those. There's just different platforms. You're going to have one platform for your website. You're going to have a different platform like Sparrow for your email marketing. Obviously, you have different platforms for online account opening and loan applications and things like that. You have your online banking provider for online banking and mobile apps and things like that. You're going to have a very vast ecosystem of technology. And it's really about, if you want to long-term really do that omni-channel personalization, it's about inventorying that technology and figuring out how to connect it all together to kind of create that best of breed digital experience platform ecosystem. And again, if you're not here yet, that's fine. We have plenty of customers that don't have a data warehouse in place. They don't have a customer data platform. And we're honestly just taking maybe CSV files. It could be directly from the core that have a little bit of customer information that we can use to drive personalization. You can start with the behavioral based stuff. It doesn't have to be this full blown ecosystem like we have here, but as you look to get there, this should be your goal. This should be your roadmap, is kind of figuring out what this ecosystem looks like. And ideally, it looks something like this, where you kind of have internally your data warehouse and your customer data platform and content management system in the middle that's listening to all these different touch points, that's gathering those experiences and those data that you're having with different customers on those different touch points, kind of mining that together, activating that data, and then driving those personalized experiences on all those different touch points. And in St. Mary's example, like I mentioned, they had kind of Snowflake as that data warehouse. But at the time, it was just that. It was a data warehouse that collected a ton of data, but there was no real way to activate that data. And that's where that customer data platform comes in. In this case, we're using a tool called Sitefinity Insights, which is part of the Sitefinity CMS, but that's that activation layer that sits on top of the data warehouse. We can pull the data in and then segment that data and then use that to kind of activate the personalization, the personas within the content management system to drive those personalized experiences. From here, as Tracy had mentioned, now how do we leverage that data to activate experiences in different touch points? Can we send information to Sparrow to kick off email campaigns and email journeys based upon behaviors within the website and other channels? So from a planning perspective, it's really all about, okay, what is my end goal? Where am I today? And then how do I build a roadmap to eventually get there? But you don't have to be there today to start. Again, it's all about that crawl, walk, run approach to personalization and building out your ecosystem. Obviously, AI is a big conversation piece. You hear a lot about AI-driven personalization and using AI to generate content and things like that. It's on everyone's mind. When I look at AI, and I think a lot of people at SilverTech look at AI in similar fashion, AI is an accelerant. We look at this both internally and how we work, and it's also how we pitch it to our customers. It's an accelerant. It's not going to replace your employees. It's not going to replace everything you're doing. But if all of your bosses are like my boss, they want to understand how we're leveraging AI to be more efficient, to get more things done, and really, get more for your dollar. How do we stretch our dollar by leveraging AI to do more for us? But again, it's not replacing anybody. It's acting as an accelerant and an enabler for us to do more. One great place is helping generate content and that sort of thing. I guess, Tracy, how are you guys using AI internally? Is it mostly on the content side? Is there other things you're doing?
Yeah, so we're using it in a few places, and I agree, Derek. It's certainly an accelerant, and for us, it really just allows us to scale.
Yeah.
not going to sugarcoat it too much. One of the biggest lifts for personalization is scale. You you've got to create more content. There are more emails to develop. There are more pages to stand up. But AI really, really helps do that at scale. One of the things that we've done is when I was talking about that persona stuff that we did, our partners at Evoke, another amazing partner that we have that has really helped us quite a bit from on the persona side so far, is they've created this, I call it our persona Bible, so to speak. It's a really thick, deep document that talks about everything from message to channel to who these people are to um, uh, how much market opportunity is for that demographic and persona. So we took that whole document and we create an AI agent with it. So when we're creating copy for a page, and maybe we have our secure planner in mind, and we create that whole page for the secure planner, and we're like, gosh, but we need like the digital native version of this. We can take that page, put it into the AI agent, and ask it to kick out the digital native version of it. So is it perfect? No. Is it 95% of the way there and requires 30 minutes of touch versus 3 hours of copywriting? Absolutely. So it really helps us from a scale perspective. We're also partnering with our folks at SilverTech to let us look across the data that we're seeing on personalization and try to help allow AI to identify areas of opportunity where we can go deeper or broader, and really continue that journey in a really smart, helpful way. So those are just two examples. There's probably a handful more, but those ones really help us just create that scale that we need to continue down that personalization journey.
Yeah, I think that's a prime use case for AI is the content generation. And I think the way you guys are doing it is the perfect way of doing it. Anyone can go to ChatGPT or Claude and say create me an article about XYZ, but it's really about developing a process around it. Our teams do the same thing. We have a content team that does copywriting and all sorts of things for various clients, and it's so easy now to create. We do it internally because we want to use private models and things like that. But even in Claude, you can go into Claude and create shared projects across your team. You can upload all of your brand documents into it. You can upload example content. To your point, upload your persona descriptions. And then you can just go in and basically say, to your point, here's the content I have for this persona, translate it to the other persona, and Claude can look at all the documentation, look at your persona definitions, and very easily translate it for you and get you to your point, 95% of the way. It's not going to be perfect, but 95% is great. It's way better than 0% starting from scratch every time. Another place I see AI kind of evolving and starting to help, especially in this space, is a lot of these customer data platforms, Sitefinity Insights included, can help with kind of AI-driven segmentation. Obviously, we know who our personas are today, but AI can help us discover new personas we might not know about. So, for example, a lot of the platforms can go into all of your content, go through your content, and use AI to start tagging the content, categorizing it. So these pages are about home equity lines of credit. These pages are about auto loans. These pages are about commercial banking and treasury services and things like that. Tag all your content, and then as people start to browse content, they could be known visitors, they could be unknown visitors. It's looking at the types of categorization they're looking at the first party data you might have there as well, and then start to recommend new segments to you. Hey, what we're seeing in the data is this type of person is consuming this type of content. Maybe there's a new persona here you didn't know about, and start to make recommendations around stuff like that, which can get really, really interesting and kind of help you, again, discover stuff that you might not have known already, which is cool. Another thing I like to talk about as part of all this, AI and data and experiences is what I call the data and experience flywheel. So right now we have kind of a one-way flow of data from, your data warehouse. We're having your first party data flow into the CDP. We're using that to personalize experiences and things like that. But now the CMS and the CDP are gathering a ton of its own information. What type of people are going to a certain page, who's converting, what, digital media or marketing campaigns are driving people in, how are they converting? Are they ending up on, the online account opening and things like that? We're gathering all this event information, all all this visitor information. We need to take that data and drive it back into the data warehouse to, again, mine with all your existing first-party data, discover new insights, discover new personas, and feed that information back into the website where we can, again, make use of those personas, fine-tune things. And then essentially it just starts to roll kind of like a snowball, right? We're gathering more and more data, feeding it into the data warehouse and getting more insights out of it. And it rolls and kind of tends to feed itself when it comes to new discovery and things like that, which is pretty amazing. Ownership in the village, Tracy.
Yeah, of course. So, as we kind of have alluded to throughout this, personalization requires a village, right? This is not a one single owner. There's lots of parts and pieces to it, but again, you can take that one step at a time. You need to make sure, first and foremost, that your internal team is aligned. So there's a little bit of setting expectations. We've all had the conversation with an executive that walks by your office and goes, "Hey, I was looking at the website today." Those folks need to understand that just because person A sees this on the homepage, person B may not see that or may see something completely different. Just because the email you received as a member looked like this, the other member may see something different. So starting to set that expectation a little bit, and setting that expectation that this is one step at a time. We're not going to wake up overnight and have everything personalized. That's not realistic. And then also starting to get your business partners aligned. Our business intelligence team, our BI team, I very lovingly call them our data gurus, are hugely important to the success. We need to make sure that we're able to get data from system A to system B, and be good stewards of that data, make sure we're sharing the data that we should be sharing, making sure we're sharing data that risk is comfortable with us sharing, and make sure that we are doing so in a way that is protecting ourselves, our members, but also is being impactful. We want to make sure that those things are impactful. And the other piece to this is, I'll talk about, and I've noted a few of them here today, but your agency partners are absolutely part of this village, and they are essential as well. They'll give you the scale you need. These agency partners are able to go very, very deep in their areas of expertise that us with our smaller marketing teams just simply can't do. So leverage the heck out of that. And don't be afraid to bring those agency partners together. Their job is your success, and the best way to make that happen is that everybody's marching together. So we have been extremely fortunate in working with the folks at SilverTech, and I mentioned Sparrow and Evoke. They have been phenomenal. They all work hand in hand together. We bring them all together for really impactful conversations. But those folks allow you to get these things done. And they provide that kind of deep expertise and scale that you need to get this stuff done. So surround yourself with that village, reach out across the aisles, and that's really going to also help to just drive this home. So results and early wins, we talked a little bit about the location-based wins. Continue to collect wins like that along your way. Continue to share those, celebrate them internally, continue to keep that momentum going forward. It's important that we, again, continue to take those small steps, let these results drive us forward and continue down this path. So I can't really stress that enough. And Derek probably gets sick of me hearing me say it on some of our weekly calls, but like, we've got to pull these data points in and we've got to scream them from the rooftops. Really kind of continuing that momentum, and so that we don't lose steam over it.
Awesome. One last poll before we kind of talk about next steps, just to kind of see where some people are on their journeys. So what is everyone's top digital experience priority in 2026? Is it leveraging first party data to personalize experiences? Is it maybe modernizing your platform to help enable some of this stuff? Improving onboarding and lifecycle journeys? using AI to drive smarter insights and next best product recommendations, increasing digital engagement, conversions, and measurable ROI, or strengthening governance, privacy, and compliance while activating data. Many of these are probably a priority for you, but what's your top one? Oh wow, pretty even across the board. Increasing digital engagement, conversions, and measurable ROI. That's interesting because I'm going to talk a little about that in a minute. So that's actually perfect. Modernizing your platform, improving onboarding. So I'd say all of these are pretty connected, which is interesting, but all good information. They're all kind of on the same page, which is interesting. All right, so what's next? What I was kind of talking about here. Obviously, we've been talking about all along. It's an iterative approach. You start small and you keep iterating. So next on the roadmap is obviously finer segmentation around personalization. We've already added new data pieces that we're starting to pull into the CDP to drive different segments and things like that. So we're starting there with some deeper integrations with the data warehouse and the core. Tracy talked about onboarding Sparrow and how can we start triggering email campaigns in Sparrow based upon behaviors in the website and data and things like that. So that's next up on the roadmap. And then just continuing our progress towards real-time personalization and moving that forward. One of the other things she talked about real quickly, and I'll dive a little bit deeper into it now, as well is how do you leverage AI to get better insights out of your data? So now that we have some first-party data in that customer data platform, and we're collecting all of the data around what people are actually doing on the website, how do we combine that information to drive deeper insights out of that data? And Tracy has, as I mentioned earlier, a data scientist on her team. She has, SilverTech as an agency. We can analyze that data. We can run queries for her, all the time. But is that the best use of all of our time? Probably not. One thing we've been playing with and we built a proof of concept around is taking all of that behavioral data we have on the website with some of that first-party data that we have, nothing personally identifiable or anything like that, just kind of experiences in the segments that they might be in, driving that data into a second separate data warehouse that is completely private. It's not in ChatGPT. It's not in cloud or anything like that. It's in a private Azure database, mining that data in there, creating connections between the data points, packaging it up into an agent that we've connected to Copilot. And now someone that doesn't know anything about databases or SQL queries or anything like that can come in and say, hey, Copilot, can you get me a list of users that went to the auto loan page in the last month? Break them down by key market, break them down by persona, and prioritize ones that have been there more than once. And Copilot can come back and give you those lists of users. You can see here, user CHU visited the auto loan page twice in one day. Other users in different key markets went 3 or 4 times in a week. That's valuable insights. Those are key buying signals. Now we can take this data, put it into Sparrow and kick off email campaigns based on this information. We did a similar query with the HELOC page, and you can see people going back to the HELOC page 4 or 5 times in 1 week. Those are great intent signs. How do we have that second conversation with them? Do we call, depending on maybe how old they are, their persona, do you reach out to them on the phone? Do you send them a text message? Do you kick off an email campaign, talking about, the benefits of home line of credit and that thing, so that sort of thing. So a lot you can kind of start to do here with AI and starting to mine that data. We talked about ROI and campaign effectiveness. We're doing this with some other clients where we can take all of their Google Analytics data, their Google Ads data, feed that into a data warehouse. One particular client, we're also getting all of their online account opening data. So now we have all of that in a data warehouse, and Copilot can very, very clearly tell us, we can connect $1 in campaign spend to, Y amount of dollars in new accounts opened within the bank, and really start to tie that ROI together without needing a data scientist to do it. So anyone that can, interact with the AI agent can pull that information out. Another great step would be, as Tracy mentioned, working with the folks over at Evoke to understand the campaigns being run and figure out if we can tie, that ROI together through AI, which is great. Another thing when it comes to kind of the roadmap and the art of possible, not things we're doing at St. Mary's right now, but some things we're doing with other financial institutions is really kind of those custom, AI models, or LLMs, if you're familiar with them. We do a lot of things around building custom models around customer attrition. You have all of that data sitting in your core that you can mine and look at and say, is this, can find me all the customers that have a greater than 70% chance of leaving the bank or credit union in the next month. And it's very easy to find those because you have the patterns. You know who's left in the past year. You can look at the patterns that they expressed. Did they have dwindling balances? Did they stop direct deposit? Look at all these patterns and identify other people that might be looking to leave, and maybe you can, intervene before that actually happens. Next best product is a big one we do a lot as well. You can create models around, again, looking at existing customers and then predicting, what the next best product for each customer member might be. It's very easy to look and say, these people are prime for a home equity line of credit, or maybe some wealth service and things like that by looking at all the data. Key takeaways. I think obviously we know customers are expecting personalized experiences. It really comes down to how do we connect that first party data to identified users to drive those experiences. That really is the foundation there. I think starting simple, again, that crawl, walk, run approach. Let's pick, as St. Mary's did, let's pick 2 segments and start personalizing those, see how it goes, and then iterate on that. Personas grounded in real data are actually obviously better to use. You can go as far as St. Mary's and have real people dress up as those personas and educate the staff, but really it's about understanding what your FI's goals are, how you're looking to grow and expand your market, and then defining personas that are going to help you get you there. And then orchestrating all of this around all those various channels. As we know, you have multiple touch points with your customers. We want to make them consistent, the same experience online as you're getting via email and text and things like that. How do we orchestrate all that across that? And then as Tracy pointed out, there's a lot of work here, and it's going to take a village to get it all done. And then finally, Tracy, where can they start today?
Yeah, so as the one thing I'll kind of just harp on really quickly first moment is from a personalization perspective, from an audience perspective, personalization is not really a nice to have at this point. It's the expectation. Thanks to the Amazons of the world and a lot of those other very, very large consumer packaged goods, it is the expectation. So in my opinion, like this is not a negotiable at this point. We've got to start to elevate there so that we're not left behind. But in terms of what you can do today, and we've talked about a lot of these things, but identify your village. Who is the village for your institution? I mentioned who it is on our side. That might be different for you guys. But identify that village, identify the holes you may have in that village and how you can fill them. Get creative. If there's somebody that wants to have a passion project, is there a leadership opportunity in the organization? Is there a partner that can fill this void for you? Think really hard about who your village needs to be and where those holes are, and start to create that village to help you along this journey. And then start small. Segment something, anything, pick something and break it in half. It's the easiest way to just start down this path, start down this journey, be able to sell that in from the executive level so you can get those extra dollars to bring in that extra help or those additional partners. Add one value exchange prompt to your conversions. What is that known versus unknown? Or mirror an email logic. Define what a few metrics are and what wins are so that you can celebrate those wins. So keep celebrating those, keep putting one foot in front of the other and making those small incremental changes, and you'll turn around in 6 months or a year from now and really be probably really surprised about how far you've been able to come. So start taking those small steps. With that, I think we're switching over to Q&A. I will let Derek kind of help facilitate that.
Yeah, I see a bunch in there in both the Q&A panel and the chat. Erin, do you want to maybe
Sure.
feed some of them to us?
Yes, we got a lot of great questions. The first one I think is for you, Tracy. It's a two-pronged question. How did you source demographic data for non-members? And then how did you augment member profiles with demographic data?
Sure. So for non-member data, we obviously had to go outside of our walls. We used a couple of different sources. There are many, many out there. One is just straight up census data. I know it sounds down and dirty, but it actually helped quite a bit. And just knowing how many people are in our market area. There's lots of just census resources online that allow you to get that. We've also worked with Revell, which is very well known in the banking space as well. They've helped us a lot as well from a understanding outside of our walls. So those two resources were really some of our bigger non-member data sources.
Great. The next question is the cost and effort to create a data warehouse has been a major impediment for us. Was it a major undertaking for St. Mary's, or were you able to find an efficient and low-cost way of doing so?
In full transparency, that was slightly before my time here at St. Mary's, but I can say it is an effort, and it is a cost. But I think what ends up happening, and this is again my opinion, if you are able to make small incremental improvements using manual methods a few times, it starts to sell in the time, effort, and dollars needed to do it in a larger scale. So generally speaking, I think that's my high level recommendation. Try to get some manual wins under your belt, try to showcase the value of those manual wins, and that will help then sell in that time, money, and effort need to be kind of put towards that to accelerate those wins, to amplify the impacts of those. Derek, I don't know if you've got more to add there as well.
Yeah, I think your data warehouse was obviously before us working with them as well. But I know just from working with other customers, it's a lot of times if it's going to be successful, it's the same kind of approach. It's that crawl, walk, run approach. And a lot of times it's just starting to gather very specific pieces of data. And a lot of times it's to drive internal reporting. It's not even to drive customer experience or anything like that. It's trying to gather information across a number of different systems, some from the core, some from maybe your account opening systems or your online banking systems to really drive internal reporting. And then kind of once you have that in place, you can start to add additional data sources to kind of help it grow more and more. And it becomes, again, more of an incremental approach. So it's not that you're not dumping a whole bunch of money and effort to build up the entire thing. Again, boiling that ocean, try and find one or two use cases, get the data you need for those, and then increment on that.
I think we have one more or time for one more, and then for the rest of the questions, we can kind of follow up after to provide answers. But the last question, in your opinion, do you need to have a CDP, marketing automation, and a digital partner to be successful? It seems like a lot of partnerships to make the wheels turn. And as an add-on, how do you get executive buy-in for all of those vendors?
Yeah, so I think I'll answer those in reverse order. I think the executive buy-in for those, again, it kind of goes into that get some small incremental wins, prove that worth, and then expand. For us, it also, one thing we did is we kind of split the difference between two financial years, right? Put one big project in Q3, Q4, another big project in Q1, Q2. That splits it across two different financial. It allows you to kind of make some more progress and continued progress without doing the sticker shock all in one year. And again, I feel like a broken record, sorry about that, but like it is small incremental steps. We did not wake up one morning and say, let's bring in these three partners at full tilt and get them in the door. It was, hey, we need a website. Like we need somebody to host our website. All right, let's start there, right? And that was over multiple years, but that a relationship has progressed along the way, and it has been small and incremental. So again, I would just say find maybe one thing that you can do this year. What can you squeeze into your budget this year? What's maybe a special project you can put into next year? And then how do you continue to build on that over time?
Yeah, just to add to that, and before people drop, I just want a quick SilverTech and myself in particular will be at Financial Brand Forum in a couple of weeks. Any questions, swing by our booth. I'd love to do demos of any of this stuff, and happy to have conversations about it. To piggyback off your answer though, Tracy, and this is obviously my bias showing, but no, you don't need a CDP. No, you don't need marketing automation to do this. We could start small, even if you're on WordPress or something today. I think of those three things they listed, a CDP, marketing automation, and a partner, I would, again, I'm biased obviously, but I'd probably put the emphasis on the partner first because they can help you kind of at least get started with the technology you have today. But again, I'm obviously biased.
No, but I would agree. They're going to help you identify where and how you can make those wins.
Yeah. All right, 3:01. We apologize for keeping you an extra minute, but thank you all so very much for attending. Again, if you're going to Financial Brand Forum, I'll be there. Would love to have more conversations. You can also reach out to us via email and all sorts of other stuff. So, Tracy, thank you for joining me. It's been great.
It was awesome, Derek, and thank you for all of our attendees as well. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Stephanie.